now see the last two Vedangas, namely Kalpa and Jyotiṣa. We'll start with Kalpa, understand quickly what Kalpa is, and then we'll go to Jyotiṣa. As I mentioned sometime earlier, if you may recall, a Kalpa is actually a guide or a user manual that provides instructions and specific directions to lead all aspects of life, including personal, family, and social dimensions. That's what is Kalpa. Kalpa has a lot of Kalpa Sutras that will help us in all these issues that we actually face. So Kalpa Sutras, if somebody reads it very carefully today, Kalpa Sutras will actually shed light on all important aspects of ancient Indian life, because it covers household life, ceremonies, law, etc., etc. So in a way, by reading the Kalpa Sutras, we can make a sense of how they have approached life, what are the do's and don'ts that they have been doing, how they have organized themselves in terms of their activities. All that we can get out of a sense of all those when we look at Kalpa Sutras. So Kalpa Sutras have, broadly have four categories. Let me pictorially show it to you. You have the first one in this group is Shrauta Sutras. Basically, it has a set of those instructions and serves as a guide for Vedic rituals. Then you have Sulba Sutras. This is very interesting. Sulba means actually thread. Sulba Sutras came out of certain things which we will again see in another chapter. In mathematics we will see. But to quickly tell you, what Indians were doing is at that time, they will have a stick, and if you tie a thread to a stick, and the only thing you can do is you can generate a circle. What can you do with a thread tied to a pole? You can only generate a circle if you take it around. But when they were actually constructing altars, the Vedic, where they have to do all that Vedic rites, the altars were some 77 different designs, I think, complex designs. All of them they generated with only this thread and tied to a pole, which is called cyclic geometry, which we will see a little later. In some American and Canadian universities they actually teach. They call it as rope geometry, because Sulba means rope. So that's why it's called Sulba Sutra. Anyway, so Sulba Sutra has rules for measurements and construction of fire altars, sacrificial place, etc., etc. Then you have a third category called Grihya Sutras. This is to do with a lot of household ceremonies. A householder has to do something morning to evening. There are some Shrautagnis, there are some Smartagnis and so on. So how do you actually do all those? What are the rules and instructions? That is called Grihya Sutra. And Kalpa also has what is called Dharma Sutras, which is a guide for social duties. After all, we are in a society, and we need to know the do's and don'ts of behaving ourselves in a society also. How do we confine ourselves to certain accepted norms and so on. So all those will be in Dharma Sutras. So this is how this Vedic Vedanga called Kalpa is separated into four divisions. Now what we will see is how these altars are. I just want to give you a small little representation of it. What you see here are some shapes. You don't even make sense of these shapes. So let me explain what these shapes are. The circular shape that you see here, right? This is called, this is the altar for what is called Garhapatyagni, and it has to be placed always at the west. So that is what it is. Then you have the second one, which is Ahavaniyagni, and that altar has to be square, as it is indicated here. It has to be square. And then you have a third, you see here there is a third semi-circular kind of a thing, which is called Dakshinagni, and this Agni. So all these are required, but the interesting part is the area of this circle should be exactly equal to the area of the square. This is one of the conditions. So now what we are saying is, if r is the radius of the circle, then we are, and a is the side of the square, then we are saying pi r square must be equal to a square. That means somehow we should know the value of pi, which the Indians knew, because they have to construct all these altars. How would you then actually create a square altar and a circular altar which is of exactly of the same area? So pi value we knew some 5000 years back and so on. And what you see in the middle, that is called Darsha Purnam Masa Vedi. Darsha means Amavasya, Purna means Paurnami. So on those days some rituals have to be done. So that is the shape of the altar. So all these shapes will be created using thread and the cyclic geometry which I was mentioning some time back. So that's how they would have done all these. So anyway, that is how some of these altars are. I just wanted to give you a little sense of all these which all form of the Kalpa Sutra. Then we have what is called Jyotiṣa, and Jyotiṣa essentially is a knowledge of the movement of stars and planetary bodies. That is called Jyotiṣa. And Jyotiṣa is compared to the jewel on the head of the snake and the crest of the peacock. Jyotish Shastra is classified into Vaidika related to Vedas and Laukika related to the world. In today's terms I am saying Jyotisha can be, whereas in Vedanga, the Vedanga Jyotisha is all about for the Vedic related things and so on. Jyotisha is connected to the Vedas, and that portion of the Jyotisha which we are talking about is called Vedanga Jyotisha. Why am I saying this again and again? Because today if you say Jyotisha, what does it mean? It means you go to an astrologer and the astrologer will tell next Saturday you will not a good day for you, next 2 years is okay. They are not part. Vedic people did not do any of those. That's called Palita Jyotisha. Palita Jyotisha is, can I look after for certain benefits? Will something happen? That's not what Vedanga Jyotisha is, and that was not the intention of Jyotisha. So I'm saying this because people translate Jyotisha is equal to astrology. Moment you translate Jyotisha equal to astrology, then immediately we understand Jyotisha is all about finding out what will happen to me tomorrow and day after tomorrow, and then you trash it. Please don't do that. The Vedanga Jyotisha has nothing to do with astrology. It has nothing to do with predict how your tomorrow will be. It is about finding an appropriate time for you to do things, and in order to fix time, they looked at the sky. They understood the stars. They understood the movement of the stars and the sun and the moon so precisely. And that's why astronomy is known to us thousands of years back. That is Vedanga Jyotisha. I want to clarify this. Don't translate Jyotisha is equal to astrology when you talk of Vedanga Jyotisha. It is all for time, estimating time, finding a good time to do things and so on. So it is classified into two recensions. The Rigvedic Vedanga Jyotisha has 36 verses. The Yajurvedic Vedanga Jyotisha has 43 verses, in which they have given some rudimentary ideas of some astronomy which they have been using. We have a chapter on astronomy in which we will talk the details of astronomy. So I am not going to get in here, just to tell you this is an astronomy department of Veda, if you wish, where they need to know stars and their movements and fix their times to do things and so on. Now these topics that you have in Jyotisha can be pictorially represented in a way which I have attempted here. What you see here is Jyotisha is broadly divided into three: Siddhanta, Samhita and Hora. And Siddhanta has the Ganita and the Gola. Ganita is the mathematical part of it, and various measures of time, some planetary theory, arithmetical computations, etc. Location of the earth, stars, description of usage of the instruments, all these will become part of the Siddhanta. Whereas Samhita consists of some of the scientific and mathematical concepts of astrology, Nimitta and Muhurta and things of that kind. And Hora is about Jataka and Prasna. So I want to tell you, this part that you see here the lower part that you see here is part of the other Jyotiṣa which we are using today. Vedanga Jyotiṣa is all about only fixing time, but for sake of completeness, I have put all of them here. This is where a bit of an astrology and prediction and all those kind of things, but the Nimitta and Muhurta part are all about fixing time and so on. That can be still used, and Vedanga Jyotiṣa has details on those kinds of issues. That's what this is about. So therefore, this is in a nutshell about the Vedanga called Jyotiṣa. As I told you, we have a chapter on astronomy in which we will look at some of the astronomical heritage of Indians, where these Vedanga Jyotiṣa will also come into play there. Therefore, let us not get into great detail now. Just to tell you, these 6 Vedangas, by now you would have realized that unless you have these 6 Vedangas in place, have a good understanding of these Vedangas, doing what is prescribed in Vedas, even understanding the mantras in Vedas, uttering it properly, pronouncing it, carrying it down the generations, all those are not possible. That's why the Vedangas are also included as part of the Vedic corpus in a way. So with this we complete this entire section on Vedic corpus. As we first saw the Vedas. It's 4 classifications, sub-classifications, what kind of messages and so on and so forth. And then we saw the 6 Vedangas. We will end this entire series of this discussion with one last video in which let us try to understand what were some of the principles of Vedic living which they brought to bearing when they were doing. So with that we will try to complete this entire module.